All right, we are live. Welcome, Gabriela, to Five Questions. And Gabriela is in the beautiful country of Macedonia.
Yes.
Awesome. I haven't been there yet, but maybe I should add it on my to visit list and go check out some of those mountains. So, do you have your first question lined up?
Yes.
Awesome.
I struggle with anxiety for a really long time, and there is period when it's really hard, and then some period it's okay. I think that I've won the anxiety, and then it hits me again. So my question is, how to get over anxiety? Is it
I
even possible, or I have to live?
absolutely. I love that question, and I've got a lot of experience with anxiety. So, what I'll do is I'll start by explaining exactly where anxiety comes from, because once you understand where it comes from, then you can kind of better address the root cause of what's causing it. So, I'll give you a very basic example. So, let's say at the age of 6 months old, you were visiting a friend's place and you were crawling under the dining room table and they had a dog. And that was your very first encounter with the dog. And that dog wasn't a friendly dog. And it runs up to you, it kind of nips at your nose, and it scares you. Okay. So, our subconscious mind, one of the roles of the subconscious mind is to keep us safe. So, after that incident, the subconscious mind goes, whoa, I don't know what that thing is, but obviously those things are dangerous. So, from now on, whenever you're around one of these things, which is a dog, I'm going to release these fear chemicals to try to keep you safe. So from that moment forward, you've got now an anxiety around dogs, a fear of dogs. And at the age of 25, you probably don't even remember what happened when you were 6 months old. But your subconscious mind now has this program that's always running to say, oh, whenever you're around dogs, I'm going to try to keep you safe. And we're going to trigger that fear. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So typically with anxiety, there's a root cause where sometimes we know where it comes from because we can remember the experience. Sometimes it comes from behavior picked up from one of our parents. So let's say as a child, you had a mom that was overprotective, overcautious, or who had a lot of fear. Then oftentimes as a child, when we see that, we're like, okay, well, mom's always scared of dogs, then that probably means dogs aren't safe, so I wouldn't be afraid of dogs too. Does that make sense? So
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
that's where anxiety comes from. Things like social anxiety, so being afraid of crowds, often comes from things like fear of being judged, sometimes from being bullied. So, the dog example is a very simple
Yeah.
example. Um, but in my opinion and based on my experience, all forms of anxiety always have a root cause.
Mhm.
So for you, is it a specific type of anxiety? Is it just general anxiety? Do you know where it comes from?
Well, anxiety, I always imagine the worst case scenario, like
Okay.
all the bad things.
Okay. And have you always had that habit, or is that something that kind of you just started doing at a certain time in your life?
Well, the first time I remember when I was in uh, primary school, maybe, I don't know, 10, 11 years old. That's the first time I remember the first panic attack and everything. Yeah.
And do you remember if your parents were very fearful, if they always had a negative outlook, if they were always expecting the worst, anything like that?
Well, maybe my mom, she's a panic person. She
Is she?
always panics about everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably where you picked it up.
Yeah, it's
Does that make
connected.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to see if we can do a little bit of clearing work on it right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the thought that comes to mind the most for you? Is it just an expectation of bad things going to happen, something bad is going to happen? What's the number one thing that kind of pops into your head?
Uh, Losing someone that it's really close to me. my
Okay.
family or friends or,
Okay. And has that ever happened to you before?
well, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that anxiety, do you think it started around that same time?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's probably the circumstance that links to that event.
Yeah.
And so for you, would you say it's the fear of losing someone or the fear
Well,
of something bad happening to you?
yeah.
The second one?
Yes.
Yeah. And can you feel that unsafe feeling right now?
Yes, I'm feeling it right
Good.
now.
Good. And if I said I feel unsafe because, what's the first thing that pops in your head?
Uh, because I know that I can control the things. If bad things come, I can control them. It's from outside.
So it's the fear of losing the control, the fear of bad things going to happen.
Yeah. And I can do anything about it.
Yeah. And when bad things happen, why do you think that those things happen? So you believe in law of attraction, yes?
Yes.
And do you believe and understand that at one point in time you were sitting around in the non-physical, an infinite being that you are, and you were like, oh, planet Earth, that looks like fun. I'm gonna go play for a lifetime on planet Earth and see what physical reality is like. Do you think that that's true? Do you believe in that?
Well, yeah, I believe that we pick to come here. We choose to
Absolutely.
come here, yes.
And like Abraham Hicks teaches, we're infinite beings, right?
Yes.
So if we choose to come here, even though there's all of this contrast, right? These what we perceive as bad things, do you think we would come here if those bad things were actually bad for us? Or do you think, are you in the collective? You're not in the collective, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so in the collective, you know what word we use for contrast? We
What?
call contrast fertilizer. And the reason we call contrast fertilizer is because when we see contrast or bad things as bad, then we expect negative outcomes out of those things,
Yes.
right? But when we see contrast as fertilizer, because whenever we experience these negative things, those things are actually launching points for growth. They're launching points for new awareness. They're launching points for triggering those negative emotions you want to clear and let go of to elevate your vibration and bring you closer to where you really want to be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the contrast you've experienced in your life, can you see how some of that contrast maybe served you and
Yes.
helped you become
Absolutely.
the beautiful person that you are?
Yeah. I now remember if some things wouldn't happen to me, bad things, I wouldn't be the person that I am now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And every single piece of contrast that we experience is designed for that growth. I don't believe that our inner beings would allow us to experience anything that wasn't for our benefit. And as I explain that, how does that anxiety feel?
Uh, it feels better now.
Is shifting a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah. And 0 to 10, do you still feel it? How strong do you still feel that anxious feeling?
Well, now it's less, maybe 5, 6.
5. Okay.
Yeah.
And I still feel unsafe because what pops in your head?
Uh, well, what I'm going to do after the bad things happen? How can I uh, manage?
So part of you feels like you won't be able to handle it.
Yes, yes. that
You know what I told somebody yesterday? Somebody yesterday told me almost the exact same thing. They said, what if I'm not ready for a circumstance? Right? But
yeah,
guess what? Your inner being is always preparing you for what's coming next. You are ready for anything that's going to unfold in front of you. You don't have to figure out how to be ready for the contrast because your inner being has already prepared you with everything you need to work through anything you experience. Your inner being wouldn't co-create an experience with you that you can't handle.
Now I feel better.
Good. So can you just take a nice deep breath and just let that awareness sink in?
Yes.
That you don't have to push against contrast. That contrast is always created with your inner being who is unconditionally loving, there to lift you and support you and help you achieve greater levels of expansion. How magical is that?
Yeah. It's really good.
Awesome. Awesome. So does it feel mostly gone now?
Yes. I feel
Awesome.
more calm now.
Awesome. Good job. You want to hop on to another
Yeah.
question?
Yes. So the next question is whatever I do or accomplish in my life, um, even if I get compliments from the people about that, I always feel like I could have done better or I could have done more. Like it's not good enough.
Okay. So let's play with that feeling now. So that feeling that is it the feeling that it's never good enough or I'm never good
Yes,
enough? It's never good enough?
yes.
And 0 to 10, how strong is that feeling?
8.
8. And I feel like it's never good enough because
People will think that I'm not smart enough
okay.
or something
And
like that.
so it's about what other people think.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So you could have two people sitting with you. One person that could think you're the smartest, most beautiful person on the planet. Another person who could think she doesn't know anything. So, which one of those two people is right?
I don't know.
Neither one of them, both of them. It doesn't matter, right?
No, yeah,
Because those are just points of view, right?
yeah,
So, the important thing to understand is other people's point of view don't mean anything. Because you get to choose the point of views that you want to choose.
yeah,
So I'm going to choose that Gabriela. She's smart. She's beautiful. She's in alignment. She knows how to follow her inspiration. And what happens out here, successes and failures, don't mean anything. And how does that feel when I say that?
it feels right.
Yeah.
Better. Yeah,
So your job as a leading edge creator who studies the law of attraction is every time you have a negative point of view that comes in, like I'm not good enough, is to recognize I can choose different. I can choose the point of view that I am good enough. Does that make
so
sense?
yes, actually it's my choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just because maybe your mom couldn't see that you're good enough, just because your friend can't see that you're good enough, just because your boss can't see it, even if you can't see it, doesn't mean that it's true.
Yeah.
Right? Because everybody is exactly who they're meant to be. Right?
Yeah.
If I hated chemistry, if I failed all my chemistry tests, does that mean I'm not good enough?
No.
No, right.
Mm.
And could you picture a 1 day old baby being not good enough?
No.
No. So
No.
by default, everybody is automatically good enough.
True.
Make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. What's your next question?
My next question is connected with my career. So now I'm like questioning if I choose the right career. And what if I'm not sure that I choose the right profession for me?
Okay, so how does somebody know if they've chosen the right career?
Well, if they feel
What's
like they, yeah,
what's the number one measurement, the number one benchmark that somebody knows, yes, this is the right career?
well, they feel excited about the job they do. They feel happy at their work.
Awesome, good answer. Okay, so do you have a career in mind?
Well, yes, I I studied economics. Now I'm working in the field of economics, but I'm not sure that I am right for.
Does it bring you joy and happiness and excitement, or is it kind of boring?
Well, like half half.
Okay, and is there something you think you'd rather be doing instead?
Uh, Maybe something more creative, more exciting.
Okay, and do you know that what that might look like?
Well, no, I'm
Okay,
not sure.
so here's my advice for you. So a lot of people, they'll just quit a career and jump into something else. And that can create a lot of wobble for people because their income automatically goes from having an income to no income, right?
Mhm.
So my suggestion for you is there a way that you can do both? So can you keep doing what you're doing now because
Yes.
it brings you an income, some of it excites you, some of it feels good, but at the same time, do those creative things that excite you, and then maybe over time, the creative stuff that excites you could turn into a career?
Yeah.
And how would that feel? Does that feel like it's a pretty simple?
Yes. Good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's okay for careers to change. So I did 10 years of computer science before I do what I do now, which is basically make people cry all day, right? Clearing emotions. But my computer science background led me to being so good at what I do because learning to analyze computer systems is very similar to analyzing what people have going on in their minds, right?
Yeah.
So for you, in some way, the career that you have now might turn into something that involves creativity and all the other stuff that you love. So I would say spend as much time as you can doing and focusing on the things that excite you and bring you pleasure, but don't feel like you need to drop what you're doing now right away. Allow the other thing to unfold into something creative and fun that might bring in money for you.
So one day I'll figure it out. Yeah.
Your inner being already has it figured out. Your only job is to follow your impulses.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Good.
Good. Feels easy?
Yes.
Great. You got another question lined up?
Well, no. I have another question, but in the first part we answered it. So,
Okay. So does that feel like that's it? Nothing else you want to explore?
well, something about manifestation.
Sure.
Like I feel like I'm doing everything, and the things are just not manifesting.
Okay. And that's very, very, very common. So
Yeah.
what I talk about in my new book and a lot in the collective is the old approach to the law of attraction is trying to use the law of attraction to manifest this, that, or the other thing, right?
Yeah.
That's why most people come to law of attraction. They want money, they want a job, they
Yeah.
want a relationship, they want something. And the problem with trying to manifest something is when you're trying to manifest, you are putting out the vibration of that thing I want is not here,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
oftentimes that's a blocking, that's a piece of resistance. So what I recommend is instead of trying to manifest, is focus on what I call the new paradigm. And the new paradigm is a state of being, it's a way of experiencing physical reality where you're having so much fun, you're experiencing so many synchronicities. Life is so magical that you're not caring about the manifestations anymore.
Yeah.
And it's from that place and that energy where those manifestations really begin to show up. So I think the key for you to letting in those desires is the creativity that you just mentioned and the
Yeah.
things that bring you excitement. Do those things as much as you can. Do those things for the pleasure of the activities, the pleasure of the journey. And from that place, I think you'll start to let some of those desires in.
Yeah.
How does that sound?
Great.
Yeah. What's
Yeah.
the biggest desire at the top of your desires list?
For now, well, I want to travel, be free, but now because of the situation, that's not possible. To be free to explore the world, travel.
Good.
Yeah.
And that version of Gabriela that's experiencing that life, we'll call her 2.0 Gabriela.
Yes.
How does 2.0 Gabriela feel compared to the current version of Gabriela? What's the biggest difference between you and your 2.0?
It's careless. I think it's not so worrying about everything. It's more positive and
And how does she feel? What's the big emotion? Is it relief? Is it
yeah,
freedom?
freedom. Yeah,
Freedom.
yeah,
That's the set point that you want to practice as much as you can during your day. So like if you can go for a hike in the mountains, feel the freedom of being able to go for a hike in the mountains. If you go to a restaurant and have a glass of wine, feel the freedom that I can go to the restaurant and have a glass of wine. Anytime you can practice that feeling of freedom and relief, that's the sweet spot for you.
yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Does that cover everything for today?
Yes, that's it.
Awesome. Great questions and thanks for playing with me.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye-bye.
Bye.